Central. Hello. All right, everybody's heads awake and bake. Everyone's awake. Janine's awake. There she is. Thank you so much for coming to the NORML Conference. This is actually our 4th or 5th year getting together experts from the cannabis community to talk about different issues that we're all having, that we're all going to be facing, you know, once legalization happens. It's interesting, I started as a volunteer maybe about 2 years ago, and even in the course of less than 2 years, like, this whole cannabis culture has completely evolved, and it's really interesting to see where it's going. But what I really want to kind of really take home, if anyone were to take home some message from this conference, is really, like, I mean, we have all these phenomenal speakers here, and they're really all here to educate us, to make us more aware of the issues that we're all going to be facing. But really afterwards, I really want people to take action. You know, it's really the action of thousands of Canadians that, you know, demonstrated, that really spoke out and said, hey, we want cannabis to be legalized. It's not a matter of just kind of saying it anymore. We really have to start having conversations with people who are going to be listening to us, who can actually do things. So start writing your politicians, start, you know, attending rallies, start writing letters, start tweeting Justin Trudeau. You know, his team has to listen. So really have your voice heard. Let's listen to all these wonderful speakers. You know, they have years, decades of experience. And yeah, let's have a really good conference. So I have the absolute honor and privilege to introduce some wittiful women who throughout many decades have really helped to move the cannabis movement forward. So without further ado, I have Dessy, Pavlova, Jamie Shaw, Irie, Sellkirk, and Amy Brown here. So we're going to be talking about various issues that women face in the cannabis industry, and just, you know, hearing about their experiences, because you ladies have gone through a whole lot of stuff, and the fact of the matter is, without all of that action, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I guess, all right. First question for our panelists. Please introduce yourselves. You know, what brought you to cannabis? What do you do?
So, I am currently chair of Canadian Students for Sensible Drug Policy, and I also work for Lyft, a company that tries to keep patients informed about medicinal cannabis. I started about 13 years ago now, when I was paralyzed from the waist down, and I found that cannabis was a great medicine for me. So I'm pretty excited that now it might actually become legal.
Turn off the other microphones. We're getting feedback on
How's that? It's a lot better, actually. So my name's Jamie Shaw. I started smoking cannabis when I was very, very young. I was actually referred to the Compassion Club very early also to use cannabis as a medicine. And I ended up working for the club, and then I ended up working for CamCD and just doing a lot of things. I have no idea what's going on here. But yeah, I co-founded the first Women Grow in Vancouver. And I write for Lyft sometimes, and yeah, do some stuff.
I'm Irie. Currently I work for Emblem as the Director of Community Outreach, which is an outreach for Tokyo North as well. I've been a patient advocate and kind of been in this space for about 10 years. When my daughter's father got MS, we started kind of navigating the system. So I've started some parent groups on Facebook, and also really excited about this class.
My name is Amy Brown. Some people know me as Amy Thomas. Some people know me as other things. I do a lot of different things. I'm not really going to talk about myself. Some things that I really enjoy is working with children, especially children under the age of 10.
about things. I'm owner of Canndo. I do a lot of media and a lot of also outreach outside of my current position at my dispensary. I've been in this industry for a decade, I'd say. A decade. It's been a while. I've seen a lot of faces come and go. I've seen a lot of faces stay, which is amazing. And I've seen a lot of women, more importantly, come in this industry. And that's what we're here to talk about, so I'm really excited about that.
Connected again. All right, so, you know what? Let's go the other way. So starting with Amy, I guess. What are some of the biggest challenges working in this industry?
Well, the legality, sure. I mean, first and foremost, I'd say the legality issues of working in this industry. Anything to do with sales of cannabis outside of a licensed producer is clearly illegal and currently illegal, and it's going to be illegal for a bit. So that is definitely, but aside from that, being a female and working in this industry is not as hard now as it was previously, though there are still many challenges that women do face. I find that there's a lot more women, so we band together, and it's a lot easier to be a woman in this industry. But some challenges that we do still face is sexism. Straight up, people think that women are little sex kittens who are supposed to be beside the man who is the grower and does all the cool stuff, and the girls is just subservient, obedient. That is not the case. That is not generally the case in this industry, but that's the visual, what people see. A lot of women may also find problems with being taken seriously. I know I had that problem as a female working under many men, that my opinion wasn't valued as much because I was a female and I didn't know as much as they did. And they were men and they clearly had a better opinion than I. So these are problems that I have personally faced in this industry, and I know a lot of women that have as well.
I have to knock things over too. And also, echo what you said, because there's a lot of sexism in the industry, which is a bummer. A struggle over a certain challenge for me has been really self-judgment. As a parent, I was really able to come out as a cannabis advocate. I've been mucking about with MMAR for years, but and educating people and kind of being that hub of information. But I haven't been able to come out for fear of judgment, and I've talked to CAS, and that sucks, and come out on the right side of it, and being able to actually make some change in the way that I can. So that's the main challenge for me, is like judgment, just the stigma of that. So I'm glad it's changing.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the biggest challenges of the industry, I mean, for me right now it was this mic, but it seems to be working okay. It's not only the illegality of it, but we're even on the legal side, we're blazing a trail. We're doing things that haven't been done before, and that's also what kind of makes it awesome, right? So there are definitely challenges there. In terms of sexism, I've been really lucky. I've worked within organizations where internally it wasn't there. But of course, externally, I faced it all the time, and there's some pretty horrible examples of it, actually. I had one advocate who harassed me for months and months through email, simply because I had a voice at all. So there are still issues. When I was president of Camp City, I had a meeting with this one dispensary owner who referred to me as Madam President every single time he opened his mouth. Like every single, yes, Madam President, okay, Madam President. It's like, what the fuck? So yeah, you still face it quite a bit sometimes.
So both from the policy side as well as the corporate side of the cannabis industry, I feel like a lot of the time, at least I found myself not confident enough to speak up. But when you do, that there's a lot of male advocates out there. So it's a matter of listening and being heard, and that those challenges with that voice will continue to change. And now that we do have a voice supporting each other and collaborating, women and men, seems to, well, we're getting close to legalization, right? So.
That's awesome. Like, I mean, it sounds as though, we asked the same question last year, and although some of the issues seem to kind of still be around, sometimes there's sexism and there's the stigma, of course, and kind of like that nervousness to find your own voice. It sounds like us women coming together, like we can kind of rise above those challenges and get shit done, really. So that's really inspiring for me. Thank you. Okay, so I guess kind of full circle. Women in the cannabis industry, not unlike other industries, face the double whammy of ageism and sexism, and the combination can feel daunting. How do these kind of expectations shape or affect your experiences working in the cannabis industry, and how do you push back or resist this?
I found asking for opportunities to be really useful, and just making clear that I'm willing to rise to the challenge, willing to put in the work. Sometimes it seems that it's expected that women can't. Sexism, I guess it's ingrained, but we can, and we do.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier in the, I think my earlier answer. Yeah, I think I should have said that.
I've found, once you find a couple allies and a couple advocates within your organization, your voice gets louder. So, an example of this is, I come from, a cannabis positive background, and a lot of people that I work with now don't, and they don't really, understand that piece of it, they don't understand, where a lot of the strong emotions come from. So, I think that some people, because they don't fit a stereotype, you can navigate that a little bit easier. But, just because I don't identify as the things that make me weird, they've kind of started to see. So, I've got 2 or 3 people that really kind of advocate that are, men, and, they'll explain strange acronyms to me that I don't understand walking out of meetings, EBITDA is a thing. It sucks. I don't know if it started with an I or an E, but I found out. Because someone in my industry, like someone in my little core group told me. So it's kind of identifying those and unifying your voices.
how I only really dealt with this for a couple of years, first few years in this industry really heavily. And how I dealt with it is I left it, I opened up my own place, and I never dealt with it again. And here we are. Like, I'm fortunate that I haven't really dealt with that, because as a female leader, I try to get other females to lead. And nothing against men. But I have to say, in the past 4 to 5 years, I've been very fortunate to not have to deal with it as much as I did it the 5 years previously. And I'm not trying to say, oh, it's so much better now, but it really is. And it's really nice to be a part of. We still have a lot of hurdles. Ageism, we talked about sexism earlier. Now with ageism, I've kind of grew up in this industry. So I went from, little meek Amy to, there's Amy type of thing. So I grew up in it, I've dealt with it, and now being a woman in this industry, I really like to encourage other women to just continue on and not to let ageism, and I would say ageism, especially for younger women who feel that they can't join because, it's full of other older people. No way. Like, there's no age limit in this industry, and I think everyone should join and be a part of it. It's a movement, right?
No, thank you so much. And I guess just kind of, it sounds like the key to push back when we experience these challenges is just to keep going forward. It's like, meek little Amy is now, bam, she, and that's just, pushing through it. And yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you. Another question that I want to hear your expertise about. In male-dominated work environments, do you feel that women need to work harder in order to be heard, respected, and validated? Amy, what do you think?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, for sure. In male-dominated work environments, do you feel that women need to work harder in order to be heard, respected, and validated?
Generally speaking, yes. They have had to, and see, I currently work in a female-dominated environment, so we're all chicks just being heard and being dominant, I guess. But it definitely in a male, I had to work harder to be heard and to be seen and to be known and to be appreciated. So I would agree that generally, yes, they do. I would hope that this changes. I would hope that this is changing much more so. dropping everything. Hoping to change much more. So, I mean, times are changing. So many more things are acceptable. And to the people that aren't accepting of it, I mean, I don't think there should really be a place for them. Like, if you can't appreciate and accept people around, then you should maybe step back and look at what you're doing. That's how I feel.
I do think that women have to work a little bit harder to get heard. But, you know, that's changing, and especially with a lot of the more women-led groups and getting, you know, our voices together. And I think that, again, for me, it comes down to, like, relationships at this point. You know, a lot of people, it's who you know, it's, you know, who you connect with, who, you know, you have similar philosophies, and, you know, kind of moving forward from there. Like, our voices are getting louder and louder. And so, you know, like one thing that I do, and that someone taught me that was really good, and it was from, like, I don't know, some politician or something. Like, if there's a bunch of women at a table and you're sitting there and one woman says something and everybody ignores it and they keep talking amongst themselves, if another woman that's there kind of identifies it and says the exact same thing in the exact same words. So that's something that, like, we've actually utilized in, like, different groups. But, you know, a lot of the younger companies that I'm working with and have more women, so there's that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. You have to work harder. You have to work longer for less money and less credit. But, you know, as Dessy mentioned earlier, is if you're focused on the work and keep doing the work, and you end up with good people around you that are also focused on work. And so your little personal environments, your little professional bubbles that are your closest circle are cool, right? It's only when you step outside of that that you still encounter it sometimes, and so yeah, that absolutely makes a huge difference.
I will say that though, yes, you do need to work harder as a woman, in the end, skills speak for themselves, and hard work does get credited eventually. It might take longer, but we get there. My experience. Lucky.
And I feel like, too, like, with all of that hard work, when we see kind of the fruits of our labor, it's just so, it makes you feel so awesome. You know, like, I worked for that. I did that. Like, we did that. And that's awesome. Thank you. Okay. It sounds like all of you have had really positive experiences, you know, with your male colleagues. And I don't want this to sound like a male bashing panel or anything. Just that, hey, like, you know. But, you know, like, we all work together, right? So I really want to hear your experiences about this. So I guess I want to ask, like, how have your male colleagues, how have they been allies to you? Like, how can male colleagues be stronger allies and help to improve work environments to make them more inclusive?
Honestly, I've been very lucky, especially at Lyft. I work with David Brown, and he's constantly, whenever I want to do something, he gives me the ability to do it and supports me. So I've been very lucky in that sense, but I've found that asking for challenges, they'll give you the opportunity to prove yourself, and from there you can just continue building.
Yeah, I mean, again, I also have been very lucky. Most of my male colleagues, it really hasn't been an issue. You know, close professional contacts hasn't really been an issue, but outside of that, it certainly can be. And I'm not sure I've ever actually had an ally. As lucky as I've been, you know, just being treated equal and the same is pretty much good enough for me. But you do see it in, like, social media threads. You know, somebody will ask, you know, oh, who's the biggest bro when it comes to, you know, Q&A, or who's the man when it comes to growing? And it's like that automatically excludes all of us, right, before the conversation even happens. And that rarely gets called out.
I'm just going to end up sounding like a broken record. I think I gave an example earlier of how, and that's what it is. It's, you know, it's those close to you, and then, you know, kind of creating space for other people that have, you know, similar mindset, that want to see more women in it, that want to make it more inclusive.
I, too, have had some great male colleagues when I did have male colleagues. Aside from some situations that I'd been in, you know, I earned respect, you know, like any other human, male or female. The fact that it's a female panel talking about men, you know, I get it in a way, but times are changing, and the fact that we're discussing how men treat us is really kind of weird now that I'm discussing it out loud. Men generally treat us pretty good. I mean, for me, I take myself seriously, and I expect to be taken seriously as well. I hold very high confidence, and I think that could be why. But yeah, I haven't really had many bad experiences either. And to the women that have, I mean, you need to speak to these men like you would speak to a woman. What is wrong with you? And that's that, really. Agree? Do you agree, ladies? Yeah, it's weird that we're talking about the way men treat us. Better treat us well.
I think it goes back to what you said earlier with confidence too, you know, like having that confidence. So, you know, however you need to get that, you know, whatever it is, if it's buddies, if it's, you know, kind of improving a skill set, or, you know, doing a bunch of research, figuring out where you're going to be.
Awesome. Oh, good stuff. Yeah, you know what, come to think about it, it really is, it really is peculiar how I'm kind of asking all these questions about men when really you women have done so much, and we continue to do so much. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, then let's think about that.
Just to balance it out a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, there have also been some, for me personally, some very bad experiences with women, especially women that have kind of felt like they had to play what they felt was the boys' club game, or, you know, the old way, and that also has been a pretty serious problem.
Fair enough. And I guess I just think about, you know, all the other, I mean, like what's really, how I kind of really started becoming super more involved with cannabis organizations is through Women Grow. And, you know, that's an organization that really helps to foster, you know, women finding their voices in the cannabis industry. But you're absolutely right. Like, sometimes those voices are kind of trying to shout over one another. And, you know, it's just one of the challenges that we face.
I honestly think it really just goes both ways. You know, like much like you were saying, I've had bad experiences with women and men. I don't think it's a sex thing. I think it's a human thing, really.
Well, fair enough.
So just be nice to each other. Right?
Yeah. All right. So how can we build an inclusive cannabis industry for people of color, Indigenous people, the LGBTQ community, and as well as women, but really? Yeah.
I would hope we've built that. I mean, I think we have built that. I think this is, we did have a little, in the Toronto community, we did have a little discrepancy. I believe it was actually a very large one, with an organization. But I mean, other than that, I think we have a very inclusive community, industry. I do see, it's unfortunate that there are a lot of more arrests on people of color, but that we cannot control as people who are not making those choices. But I do think that we're very inclusive. I've seen nothing but inclusion, so I don't think I should answer this question because I've only seen it. Yeah.
No, I don't. I haven't seen entire inclusion on all levels. You know, definitely in the community, there's, you know, more, but. You know, there's even an article written about, you know, the lack of women on boards across Canada. It's like 4 women across all these, you know, massive companies, and you know, that's not inclusive, and that sucks. And there's, you know, sort of a lack of diversity for people of color as well. And you know, it's a matter of like showing up. We have to just continue to show up all the time. You know, like that's how I got involved. It starts showing up places, and then inviting other people that may not have the confidence, or, you know, they know stuff, and there's experts. There's so many experts in this industry, and if more of them actually start speaking to people that have like financial interests in this, and actually, like, if you don't tell people what you want it to be, then they don't know. You know, it's the same thing as like social activism. Like, you want the library to stay open, you show up, you get the petition, you say these are my favorite books. You know, like if we don't show up and say this is how we like, this is the culture, this is it, and you know, have those conversations, then it's going to continue to be exclusive because it's just a small group. You know, so. You know, I haven't seen it too inclusive on all levels, but it is changing, and you know, a lot of the companies are starting to, you know, take, you know, real, you know, progressive stances on like who they're hiring, and you know, there's a lot of companies that have, you know, half women. You know, Tokyo Smoke has, you know, half women on their team, and you know, my boss is a really strong woman as well. That's kind of been an ally of mine. So showing up, making more space for more people, because I think it could be a lot more inclusive on that level.
Yeah, but that too is a grassroots kind of thing that's working its way up into things, right? It's not in the regulations. It's not in any kind of. There's been no. You know, when the Liberals ran for government, they didn't just run on cannabis legalization. They ran on increasing the middle class. They ran on increasing the status of women. They ran on apologizing to First Nations. And we haven't seen any of that being addressed. In fact, what we've seen is if you're even suspected of breaking the CDSA any time in the last decade, then you can't actually be an owner of any kind. You can work at a lower level in the organization. So when we know for a fact that people of color and minority communities have been overly targeted in the drug war, we know for a fact that we're excluding them. Now that's, to me, a problem. We've not figured out what's going on with First Nations lands. I'm very excited to actually talk about some of the legal issues around that tomorrow, because we're still breaking treaties all over the place. We haven't figured any of that out yet, and how that fits, particularly within any sort of provincial model, right? So. You know, there's a lot of work to be done on that level, and I'm not seeing any desire to address that. I'm not seeing training programs for women. I'm not seeing investment programs for women or people of color. I'm not seeing anything like in Oakland where they make sure somebody in those communities gets licenses. I'm not seeing anything like in Berkeley where they make sure people of low income have access to medicine. I'm not seeing any of that, and that's a pretty serious issue. We're not seeing barriers to access come down in the face of fentanyl. That, to me, you know, barriers to access, we're already winning court battles before fentanyl became a problem. So these are all serious issues that I don't see being addressed at all, and that's a problem.
Well, I think continuing to talk about them and making them the center of our discussions, that's the only way things change. About a decade ago, maybe there wasn't very many women in the cannabis industry in leadership roles. Now, I work in a company that's almost half women. Earlier this year, it wasn't. So things can change, and they can change quickly, but it's a matter of speaking up and making sure that those viewpoints are heard and that there's a platform to disseminate that knowledge.
And it's making people understand that it's actually good for a company to be diverse. It's healthy for the company itself and for its bottom line.
How do you think that we can encourage that more so, though?
Well, like I said, I mean, some training programs would help, some grants. We're changing that already ourselves. It's the awareness, but there's still some institutional biases that need to be addressed. Even on companies that have a lot of women in leadership roles, who owns it, right? And that there's a big disparity there suddenly, right? And so that's an issue. It's like in the 70s, 30% of healthcare professionals were I'm trying to remember now, I lost the stat, but there was something like women were 70% nurses and 30% doctors back in the 70s. And now it's something like 60-40, so it's starting to even out. But it's that sort of institutional bias where there's only a certain level that you're likely to reach or attain, and that's an issue. And we see that in every other industry, not just cannabis. There was a show in the 80s called Remington Steele about a female private detective that invented a man, and she suddenly had tons of business because she just invented this guy. That actually happened last week. There were two women that had a digital startup, and they created a man, and they managed to get their funding. So it's like, you know, our reality right now is still a plot from like a 1980s TV show. So.
Agreed, and that sucks completely. I was just reading something about two coworkers that flipped email addresses, and it was a man and a woman, and it was by accident. And this woman was like, "I don't understand why my life is so easy this week." Like everyone was just like, "Sure, no problem. That makes sense. It's a great idea. Like you should totally do that." And the guy was like, "Why is everyone like, I'm fine? Why does everyone keep asking me if I'm fine? Like everything's okay?" So yeah 80, right? It's awful business. So I don't know.
That totally makes sense. And I think like kind of Jamie, going back to what you were saying, like, you know, this is like it's good for business, it's good for and I guess just kind of, you know, speaking from somebody who you know, in my organization might not be super high level C-suite. I guess it would be up to me to go to my higher ups and say, hey, like, you know, how many activists are we hiring, or how many people of color are we hiring? Like who am I working with? Because these are, you know, I want to be sure that the people that I'm working with are on board, have the same kind of the same passions as I do, and the same desire to have an inclusive and diverse company, right? So, no, very cool. Thank you. So what advice would you give to women who are trying to begin their cannabis careers? Irie.
All right, I'm in. You know, sort of what I don't know, I'll tell you what I did. So I did a bunch of research on, you know, people that were active in the community. I've been aware of what's going on. I just wasn't sort of actively involved. So, you know, I sort of sought people out that were saying things that I like to hear. Then, you know, I said, this is what I bring to the table. This is what, you know, I can do. And I just started showing up places. And then, you know, decided where I needed to learn more skills. Excel sucks, you know, like that kind of stuff. And just, you know, increase the skills that I didn't have to sort of match the experience that I brought from, you know, my past. And then found somewhere to fit in and went from there. So, you know, I suggest that women do a lot of research and a lot of education so that they come to the table fully equipped.
Yeah, I totally echo that. I had actually done a ton of research on cannabis for a documentary script that I had been working on like a long time ago. And it involved somebody actually giving me, they had a High Times collection of every single issue up until like 1997. And that involved me sitting there and reading every single one from cover to cover. I move a lot, so I was in a lot of different US jurisdictions, and I was able to kind of follow what was going on there. And for me, and I mean, we're talking about some of the barriers to the industry. My husband and I are now divorced, but he was American, and I had to support his immigration up here, which meant I had to give up my career. I had been working in theater and film for 15 years, and it's always contract work, right? It's one show at a time. And you can't support somebody's immigration without a regular paycheck. So I actually had to give up my career in order to support him, his mother who couldn't really walk, and our dog. We ended up getting divorced. His mother passed away. Our dog passed away. And I was still in the job that I had been doing to support all of them, and kind of realized, wait a minute, I don't need to be doing this anymore. I don't need to be making this much money. Actually, it's just me. So I was able to go and work at the Compassion Club, and so I applied for a job there, making significantly less, but it was more my heart. It was at least closer to something that I cared about and that I wanted to do, and everything fell into place from there. Like Dessy said again earlier, I have to keep referencing this because it's do the work. It's just a matter of doing the work. When I got to CamCD, it was sort of like nobody really wanted to do the work at that point. Nobody was really interested in it. Harper had just kind of come in, and he had been talking, you know, had just won re-election, and he'd been talking pretty harsh. And, you know, we went from like, I think 35 dispensaries in the country down to about 20 within the space of a few months. It's the biggest dip that we've really ever kind of seen. And so nobody was really doing the work, so I was lucky. I was, you know, I was doing work that no one else was doing, and now I'm lucky enough to still be doing that with MMJ Canada. And so, yeah, just focus on the work. You don't need to play mean girl games or screw anyone over. There's room for so many people, and there's room for your voice and what you bring to the table as well.
Yeah, the main advice I'd give is take initiative and be assertive with your knowledge. They'll listen if they know it's there, but sometimes we have to prove ourselves a little bit more as women, unfortunately. But I'm hopeful it's changing. Seems to be.
But you know, that kind of thing also just kind of makes us work harder, you know? So there's that way to kind of look at it as well.
Do it. That's my advice. Get out and do it. You know, don't just make up excuses. I'll pick, oh, you know, I have kids, or oh, I'm afraid of my mom. And get out and do it. You're never going to know if you're going to succeed unless you try. I completely agree with the education. Be knowledgeable before you just go out and do it. But as soon as you have that knowledge, do it. Stop making excuses. And I find that a lot of parents are more nervous because they're afraid of children's aid. And I've dealt with them many times. I still have my child. I'm still in this industry. I have no intentions of leaving it. There goes something else I'm dropping. But get out and do it. Women have been doing that too, as you can see by this panel. I mean, look at the amount of education and knowledge and the titles these women hold. So women are doing it. Just keep doing it. And if you need to find someone who you look up to, find a female in this industry you look up to and ask them how they did it. You know, and they're probably going to tell you they educated themselves and they went and they did it, and they didn't let anyone stand in their way, and it wasn't because of a guy let them do it, or because it was because they had the skill and the knowledge and they could do it. So get up and do it, please, ladies. We want you here.
Awesome. Thank you. So I guess, how about, I'm asking you to give advice to women who are just entering the cannabis industry, but what would you, or would you share any advice for women who are already there, who maybe see, who are watching the news and are getting really kind of downtrodden and kind of, disappointed with, either the way legalization is progressing or how their company's working, or just kind of the politics or the drama that kind of happens in this cannabis community? Like, do you have any words for them?
Don't give up. I mean, as you would say to anyone in any industry, at times will get hard. Don't give up. If your business isn't going as well as you plan, maybe you need to step back and reevaluate it. Have a friend help you with that. But women in this industry, we have done so much and we have come so far, and this is just such a pivotal time. So I would say, please hang in there. There's so many women doing so many great things, and as you can see, women are banding together and they're doing fabulous things. Lisa in front of me, she's got this amazing market that goes on, her and a couple other women. Am I correct in saying that? Women banding together and doing great things, and they were doing other things before, but then they came together and did, and that's what I recommend. Get together with your friends and make big movements, because of right now is a time of change in this industry. And I know we said that last year, and it was, but now it's crunch time. So we just got to get together and use our skills and do the best things we can to make this plant the best it can be in our country, to see it that way in our cities, and for it to be accessible, most importantly.
And in don't giving up, also have long-term vision. This is, laws change. This is just, that's the whole process. That's the whole thing. They're not going to, say, no law works like that. And quite frankly, we've pushed this bill through faster than any legislation in recent memory. I think there's actually, broke some records. So the amount of lobbyists that are talking to the government about it, people are involved, they're interested. It's changing all the time. So have long-term vision. Look to the end of it. There was LCBO, and then there was craft beer. There's room for this to change, and this is a huge. At the end of the day, I kind of step back, and it's just like, and we're selling weed, and we're doing what we want to do. So it's not gonna, so have a long-term vision and don't give up, and have a strategy. Have a couple different strategies. Have a bunch of different ideas. Talk to people about them. Communicate. That's the best way to keep moving forward in this.
Yeah, and in terms of the drama around the community, just walk away. It doesn't really matter what you're walking away from. If we've all been sort of saying very similar things, where if you just kind of do the work, it will eventually pay off. So the point is, if you're walking away from something, you're the one that did the work. So you're still going to be able to do the work. So that's actually an important thing to consider. And in terms of government, there's a lot of time for change. There's a lot of people on our side. I mean, there's a dispensary, for example, and to talk about an Ontario-specific example, there's a dispensary in Toronto that had employees unionized. It's not a public employees union, so if you're now talking about a government proposal that's going to say, well, we're going to have government-run stores with the public employees union, well, now there's a union that actually has to fight for their members' jobs, which would be against that. We already know, I think it was the Small Business Association of Ontario was against that. So there's still time for debate, there's still time for change, and there's still time to make a difference. And even when it goes through, it's important to realize this was something that we had to keep reminding ourselves in Vancouver when they started doing the dispensary licensing, is that once it's a law, there's a process to change it. There's a process to amend it. Before it's a law, you can't do anything at all. So frankly, no matter how bad the law is, as soon as it's the law, there's a process to amend it and to keep amending it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's never the end. There's always opportunity to make things better, and we'll continue to. And I think the main way to do that is before there was an industry, there was a community. And a lot of us are still a part of it. How do you make a community? Through communication and collaboration. And I think the women in this industry are doing a good job making sure that continues into the industry.
Awesome. Wow. You know, Dessy, I couldn't end this more eloquently. So thank you so much, you know, everyone for you know, participating in this panel. It sounds like really all you wonderful ladies got to where you are through resiliency and just gritting your teeth and getting the work done, really communicating with those who you know you need to work with, both men and women. Really having a vision as to what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, how you want to see things happen, and really just kind of moving forward and kind of powering through it. And like as Dessy said, I mean, cannabis really started as a community, you know, and cannabis continues to build communities, whether it's you know, passing a joint to someone on the left-hand side, you know, a stranger you see on the sidewalk, or, you know, more formal organizations like Women Grow or NORML, or, you know, other ways we can get together, because it sounds like it's, you know, through like this collaboration and this community and this kind of banding together where we can actually make change. So thank you so much. I hope you guys stick around. We'll have a few more panels, and thank you.
Thank you for supporting the NORML Cup 2017 on Craig Axel. The show rolls good.